Here's something that surprises almost every retiree the first time they hear it. Taking your required minimum distribution on time, hitting the deadline, avoiding the 25% penalty we have talked about on this channel before, is not actually the finish line. It is just the first hurdle. There's a second, much quieter way that retirees are losing money on these mandatory withdrawals every single year, and it has nothing to do with missing a deadline. It has to do with getting the mechanics wrong. The how, not the when. And the retirees making these mistakes are not careless people. They are doing exactly what they think is required, on time, in good faith, and still quietly losing thousands of dollars. My name is Finn, and this is Finn Retires, the channel that exists to make sure the money you spent your working life building actually stays in your pocket. If this is your first time here, please hit that subscribe button right now before we go any further. Every week on this channel, we cover the specific rules and mistakes costing retired Americans real money in 2026. Today's topic is a direct continuation of one of the most important videos we have ever published on required minimum distributions. You do not need to have watched that one to get everything out of today's video. So subscribe, stay with me, and let us walk through the 5 specific mistakes quietly draining retirees' savings this year. Let me remind you quickly of the stakes. Once you reach your RMD age, 73 if born between 1951 and 1959, 75 if born in 1960 or later, the IRS requires you to withdraw a specific minimum amount every year, and failing to do so correctly triggers an excise tax of 25% on the shortfall. The 25% penalty does not care why the mistake happened. It does not distinguish between a retiree who simply forgot and one who took the distribution but made a technical error in how they did it. Both situations can trigger the exact same penalty. The first mistake is a fundamental misunderstanding of the aggregation rule. If you have several traditional IRAs, the IRS requires you to calculate the RMD for each one separately, but you're allowed to combine them and withdraw the total from just one of those IRAs, or spread it across several. But that same aggregation privilege does not extend to 401k accounts or other employer-sponsored plans. If you have money in 2 different 401ks from 2 different former employers, each plan requires its own separate RMD calculation and its own separate withdrawal. You cannot combine them. Retirees who assume all their retirement accounts work the same way as their IRAs, and who apply the aggregation rule across a mix of IRAs and 401ks often end up under-withdrawing from one of their 401k plans without realizing it, creating exactly the kind of shortfall that triggers a penalty. The second mistake looks, on the surface, like something responsible, putting withdrawn money back into a retirement account. This is the mistake of attempting to roll over an RMD under Internal Revenue Code, Section 408D, 3E. Any portion of a distribution that satisfies your RMD is specifically excluded from rollover eligibility. A retiree receives their annual RMD as a check, has heard of the 60-day rollover rule, and assumes it applies here too, so they deposit the RMD check into a new IRA within that window, believing they are simply moving their own money around. But that specific amount was never eligible for rollover treatment in the first place. The IRS treats it as an excess contribution, which carries its own separate penalty, typically 6% per year on the excess amount. For every year, it remains uncorrected. The third mistake involves inherited IRAs, and it has become far more common in the past 2 years. When the Secure Act eliminated the old stretch IRA provisions, it replaced them with a 10-year rule. The entire inherited account must generally be emptied by the end of the 10th year after the original owner's death. For years, there was genuine confusion, even among financial professionals, about whether beneficiaries needed to take distributions during those 10 years or could simply wait and empty the account in year 10. The IRS finalized its regulations, and the answer for many beneficiaries is not what they expected. If the original account owner had already begun taking their own RMDs before they passed away, the beneficiary is required to take annual RMDs throughout the entire 10-year period, not just empty the account by the final deadline. Beneficiaries who assume they have a full decade of complete flexibility and skip distributions in years 1 through 9 can find themselves facing the same 25% penalty on every year's missed distribution, discovered all at once, often during an already difficult time after losing a parent or spouse. The fourth mistake is taking the RMD from the wrong account entirely. Roth IRAs carry no required minimum distribution obligation at all during the original owner's lifetime. This has always been true and remains true today. Some retirees, managing multiple accounts, mistakenly take their RMD equivalent withdrawal from a Roth IRA, either misremembering which account requires it or assuming all their accounts follow the same rule. This does nothing to satisfy the actual requirement on their traditional IRA, which remains untaken. The fifth mistake is the one that surprises retirees most because it does not show up immediately. It is failing to consider how a large RMD affects your modified adjusted gross income, or MAGI, and how that interacts with Medicare premium surcharges known as RMA. If your MAGI exceeds certain thresholds, the government adds a surcharge on top of your standard Medicare Part B and Part D premiums, potentially hundreds of dollars more per month. Critically, the income figure Medicare uses is based on your tax return from 2 years earlier. A large RMD you take this year, which pushes your MAGI across a threshold, does not affect your Medicare premiums this year. It affects them 2 years from now, when the connection to the original RMD decision has often been completely forgotten. There's a strategy that helps address several of these mistakes at once: a qualified charitable distribution. If you are 70 and a half or older, you can direct up to $111,000 in 2026 directly from your IRA to a qualified charity. A properly structured QCD counts toward satisfying your RMD, but the amount is completely excluded from your taxable income and from the MAGI calculation that determines your Medicare surcharge. The money must move directly from your IRA custodian to the charity for it to count. Let me bring these mistakes together with a real example. Consider a retiree named Diane, 74, living in North Carolina, a genuinely careful, organized person. She has 2 personal IRAs and correctly aggregated their RMDs. She also inherited a 3rd IRA from her late sister 2 years ago. Because Diane assumed the 10-year window gave her complete flexibility, she had not taken any distribution from the inherited IRA in either of the 2 years since inheriting it. She also mistakenly believed her old 401k could be aggregated with her IRAs. It could not, and that distribution came up short too. Diane did not make one obvious error. She made 3 smaller, understandable mistakes, each rooted in a reasonable assumption. When her tax preparer reviewed her full picture, all 3 shortfalls came to light at once. Because she engaged immediately and corrected them promptly, her total exposure was significantly reduced, but it took months and real stress to resolve. Here is what I want you to do. First, if you own more than one traditional IRA, confirm which accounts can be aggregated and which cannot. IRAs can combine, but 401ks and other employer plans each require separate distributions. Second, never attempt to redeposit or roll over an RMD check into any retirement account. It is not eligible for rollover treatment. Third, if you have inherited an IRA recently, confirm whether the original owner had already begun their own RMDs, because that determines whether you owe annual distributions during your 10-year window. Fourth, before taking any RMD-related withdrawal, confirm you're taking it from an account that actually carries the requirement. Roth IRAs do not. Fifth, if your RMD exceeds what you need, talk to a tax professional about a qualified charitable distribution to protect both this year's taxes and your Medicare premiums 2 years from now. If this video helped you catch something you did not know before today, share it with someone in your life who has a 401k, a traditional IRA, or who has inherited a retirement account in the past few years. These mistakes are happening quietly, right now, to people doing everything they think is required. Drop a comment below and tell me, which of these 5 mistakes surprised you the most? Did you know RMDs cannot be rolled over? Were you aware inherited IRAs might require annual distributions during the 10-year window? I read every single comment personally.